What kind of movie becomes a cultural phenomenon almost by accident? What happens when a script isn't finished, the lead actress won't promote it, and the premise collapses under real-world logic, yet the film still dominates theaters, soundtracks, and living rooms? That unlikely miracle is Sister Act, Disney's 1992 comedy about a lounge singer hiding from the mob inside a struggling San Francisco convent. On paper, it sounds absurd. In reality, it became one of the most successful and enduring comedies of its era. So how did this happen? And what strange, chaotic, and surprising truths were hiding behind those choir robes? Let's take a deeper look. A role almost played by someone else. Before Whoopi Goldberg ever put on a nun's habit, Sister Act was written for Bette Midler. In fact, screenwriter Paul Rudnick crafted the role specifically with her in mind, even naming the character differently in early drafts. Disney wanted her badly. Jeffrey Katzenberg personally reached out, more than once. Yet Midler declined every time. Her reason? She believed her fans wouldn't accept her dressed as a nun. Have you ever passed on an opportunity out of fear, only to realize later it could have changed everything? Midler eventually admitted she regretted the decision. Once Whoopi Goldberg took the role, the character didn't just work, it became iconic. The film grossed hundreds of millions worldwide, and Goldberg carried the role straight into Hollywood history. Midler went on to have an extraordinary career of her own, of course. But somewhere in a parallel universe, there's a version of Sister Act led by Bette Midler, and we'll never know what that looked like. A real-life nun who inspired the story. To ground the story in reality, Rudnick looked for real-life inspiration, and found it in Deloris Hart, a Hollywood actress who shocked the industry by leaving fame behind to become a Benedictine nun. Hart wasn't a minor star. She gave Elvis Presley his first on-screen kiss and was widely seen as a future Grace Kelly. Then, in the early 1960s, she walked away from Hollywood entirely and entered a cloistered monastery. Rudnick visited the abbey, observed the rhythm of convent life, and absorbed the contrast between glamour and devotion, even though he never actually met Hart during that stay. Years later, Hart offered one piece of advice to the Broadway production team that captured the spirit of the film perfectly. Don't make nuns seem holy all the time. God wants our humanity. Isn't that insight part of why Sister Act still resonates? Filming without a finished script. Once Whoopi Goldberg signed on, the studio rushed into production, even though the script was far from complete. Scenes were rewritten mid-shoot. Dialogue changed constantly. Entire sequences were being invented on the fly. Director Emile Ardolino later admitted the process was chaotic. Imagine showing up to work not knowing what your character would say, or who they even were, until the day of filming. To stabilize things, Disney brought in multiple writers. Then Goldberg took matters into her own hands and quietly called in Carrie Fisher. Yes, that Carrie Fisher. Fisher worked uncredited as a script doctor, sharpening dialogue, grounding the character in Whoopi's voice, and helping smooth tensions between cast and studio. Without her involvement, the movie might have collapsed under its own confusion. At one point, the original writer distanced himself so completely that he requested a pseudonym in the credits. Yet somehow, through sheer talent and timing, it all came together, creating a memorable nun. Kathy Najimy's sister, Mary Patrick, didn't come from a theology book. It came from television. Najimy once explained that while watching Entertainment Tonight, she noticed Mary Hart's relentlessly cheerful delivery and thought, that's it. That's the character. The result was a nun who radiated joy, sometimes to the point of irritation, but never crossed into caricature. She felt real, specific, and oddly familiar. Isn't that often what makes supporting characters unforgettable? Who really did the singing? Here's a question many fans still ask. Did the cast really sing? The answer is mixed. Wendy McKenna, who played the shy sister Mary Robert, delivered the emotional performance, but her singing voice was dubbed by professional vocalist Andrea Robinson. Robinson specialized in providing powerhouse vocals for film characters who needed a sudden musical awakening. Whoopi Goldberg, however, did all of her own singing. Every lounge performance, every choir number, every show-stopping finale. She trained extensively to handle the vocal demands, and it shows. What audiences heard wasn't studio trickery, it was preparation meeting opportunity. A star who refused to promote her own movie. Despite the film's joyful tone, Goldberg's relationship with Disney had deteriorated by the time filming ended. The rewrite chaos, creative clashes, and studio pressure left her frustrated enough that she refused to promote the film at all. No interviews. No talk shows. No press tour. Have you ever seen a major studio release succeed without its lead star pushing it? Sister Act did exactly that. Word of mouth carried it. The soundtrack stayed on the charts for over a year. Audiences showed up anyway. Sometimes, a movie doesn't need marketing, it needs momentum. Chaos off camera. Behind the scenes, the cast leaned into the absurdity. Kathy Najimy and Wendy McKenna famously ordered room service while still in full nun habits, staging pranks that confused hotel staff and delighted the crew. During filming in Reno casinos, cast members gambled, smoked, and drank in costume, turning heads everywhere they went. Imagine walking into a casino and losing money to a nun with a cocktail and a cigarette. That's not just a story, you'd swear it was a hallucination. The paycheck that changed Hollywood. When Disney wanted Sister Act 2, Whoopi Goldberg negotiated from a position of strength. Her salary made her the highest-paid actress in Hollywood at the time, rivaling the biggest male stars. But she didn't just take the money. She used her leverage to secure U.S. distribution for Serafina, a politically charged musical about South African students resisting apartheid, a film studios had previously refused to touch. One hit comedy gave her the power to elevate a completely different story. That's influence. Turning pop songs into gospel gold. Composer Mark Shyman pulled off what should have been impossible, transforming pop and doo-wop classics into believable gospel performances. My Guy became My God. I Will Follow Him turned into a church-shaking anthem. Shout became a full-blown celebration. The soundtrack spent over a year on the Billboard charts and became a staple in households that didn't even own the movie. When fictional nuns start performing live at real-world events, you know something crossed over. Harvey Keitel's strangest career year. In 1992, Harvey Keitel appeared in 2 films about nuns, and they couldn't have been more different. In Sister Act, he played a mobster frustrated by the fact that his former girlfriend disappeared into a convent. The role was menacing but comedic. That same year, he starred in Bad Lieutenant, one of the darkest, most brutal films of the decade. 2 nun movies. 1 year. Completely opposite extremes. What does that say about range or timing? From movie screen to Broadway stage. Nearly 2 decades later, Sister Act became a Broadway musical. It earned multiple Tony nominations and launched the stage career of Bette Midler, who would later win a Tony for Pippin. When the production reached London, Whoopi Goldberg returned, not as Deloris, but as Mother Superior. It was a perfect full-circle moment. The rebel nun had become the authority figure. A box office shockwave. Made for $31 million, Sister Act earned over $230 million worldwide. It outperformed action films, thrillers, and superhero movies. On home video, it became the most rented VHS of 1993, an era when weekend plans depended on whether someone rewound the tape. It wasn't just a hit. It was an event. Lawsuits and copycat claims. Success invites attention, and lawsuits. Multiple parties claimed Sister Act stole their ideas. All cases were dismissed. Courts ruled that the concept of singing nuns wasn't proprietary. 2 lawsuits. 0 victories. Sometimes, a good idea really is just a good idea. A plot that makes no sense, and that's the point. Let's be honest. Witness protection doesn't work like this. The U.S. Marshals don't hide witnesses in convents, encourage public performances, or put them on television. Real protection depends on anonymity, not applause. But realism was never the goal. Sister Act succeeds because it commits fully to its absurdity. It asks you to suspend disbelief, and rewards you with humor, warmth, and music that still resonates decades later. And maybe that's the real lesson. Not every story needs to be realistic. Sometimes, it just needs heart. This was just the beginning. Hit that subscribe button and buckle up. Digital Garage has so much more in store.